All right, I think we're live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's AuthZed webinar. The topic for today is SpiceDB for modern authorization. My name is Sam Kim. I'm a software engineer here at AuthZed, and I am joined by Jess, who is our product marketing manager. Today we'll be doing a demo, having a live code along, and we'll also have time for questions at the end. But also feel free to ask questions through the questions tab while we're live. If the question is something we can answer in real time, we'll do it. If it's something that I think we can answer at the end during the question period, we'll respond and make sure to get back to those at the end as well. All right, well, in that case, let me get started. Bear with me as I set up my sharing. Okay, Jess, can you confirm that you're seeing my screen here?
I do see your screen.
All right, great. So today's agenda. So today we just did some intros. I'm gonna show what modern authorization means. We're gonna go into the steps of how to get SpiceDB up and running and start integrations with your application. And like I said, we'll have some time at the end for questions. So one thing that I think people tend to think about when they think about authorization is what's called RBAC, role-based access control. And so with role-based access controls, you have a user. That user has certain roles assigned to it, and there are permissions assigned to that role. So for example, here we have an admin dashboard for a SaaS application from the Acme Corporation. In this dashboard, we're on the users page where you can presumably manage users of the product. As you can see here, when you're not signed in, you don't have access because it doesn't know who you are. And let's say my account has the admin role. And so one of the interesting side effects of a role-based permissions model is that it's usually all or nothing. Because my account has admin access, I get to see everything that an admin can see, and other users who also have the admin role can also see the same things. In a world where we have modern authorization, that doesn't have to be the case. So let's say we want to adjust this admin dashboard to only allow managers who to be able to edit or take action on users that are part of their team. And so instead of seeing all users and being able to action on every user, we just want to limit the number of users and the types of actions that are relevant to that manager. So in our case, if we, this demo app has been integrated with SpiceDB, and so it has some modern authorization functionality. And so if we see, let's say Sean, we wanted to go delete him. Right now, it's set up so that it's not like I don't have access to perform the delete action on the Sean user. But with modern authorization, we can add permission ACLs on every action. And so if we set up and grant access to be able to delete the Sean user for myself, I can now go in and delete Sean. Oh, the demo bugs have hit. Bear with me as I adjust this. Let's see. Gotcha. apologies. So what happened there was we had granted access for the specific delete action for just the Sean user. And so what you can see is that now the Sean user was deleted. So that was an example of being able to add a granular permission for a particular action. And that was a building block to be able to have a different kind of application experience over an RBAC experience, which is an admin in an RBAC dashboard may be able to delete everything, but now we have the option to be able to fine grain permission each delete action. But in that's kind of a contrived scenario because being able to have permissions on individual delete actions where you can see all the users is a little bit odd. In an ideal world, we actually just show the relevant users for that particular manager user. And so let me set that up. So now if we pretend we have a way of showing for a manager, these are the users that are part of your team. So in this dashboard, we only want to show the users that are on my team. So if I refresh, we see that a subset of the users that were there are now here. And if I go and delete, and I also have the ability to delete only the team members that I have access to. So if I were to delete this one, same fine-grained permissions apply. So in a world where we have modern authorization, one of the questions that you can now begin to ask is, what are the application experiences that can be unlocked? And so what we just demonstrated is that you can both have fine-grained permissions on individual actions, as well as being able to filter resources that are relevant to a user. And so that set of problems is actually called ACL filtering. And so what we showed there was that in an admin dashboard, we can just show the relevant content for a particular user, and that content is backed by permissions. So that demo application is actually a Next.js admin dashboard template with some minor adjustments to integrate SpiceDB. And so today, I'm going to show you what those minor adjustments are, and we're going to walk through that together. So for the next section, first thing we need to do to integrate SpiceDB is to install SpiceDB. And so for that, I'm actually going to take you to the SpiceDB GitHub repo. SpiceDB is open source. It is in production use by many people. But if we scroll down, we can see the installation options. So there are installation instructions for various platforms. One of the easiest ways to get started is actually running it via Docker. And so you can just pull the image and get running quickly. Let me show you that. So I had it running for the demo, but one of the ways to get started is actually just running it via Docker. That's one command you can use. I actually have it running installed locally via Brew on my Mac. So I'll run it that way. Oh, and then I was gonna show, once you have it installed locally, SpiceDB actually has various commands you can run it with. They're noted here, and we also have more detailed documentation on what each of them do. But the two of them I'll highlight that are particularly useful are the surf testing command. This is actually something you would use when you're running it and you're testing. It actually will spin up in-memory database for your SpiceDB data, and you can access it with any token, and each token actually has a self-contained database. That's very handy for CI testing. And then serve is actually the one we'll be using to actually serve SpiceDB for our application permissions. And then the other tool is the ZCLI tool. So we're going to show the APIs that SpiceDB exposes in this next section. but one of the tools that we've built, Zed, allows you to make these API calls just by a more user-friendly command line. And so in the demo, I was actually using Zed to write data to our database. And so Zed, if you search Zed, it's also available via Homebrew as well as other installation methods. But you can also see the various commands that Zed supports here. Okay. Okay, so next we'll look at some of the APIs that SpiceDB exposes. Let me make sure that SpiceDB is running. It is running. So SpiceDB exposes its APIs via gRPC. So one of the advantages of that is that we can use take advantage of the gRPC ecosystem. And so we have this tool called Crea, which is a gRPC client. I'm actually just going to open up a sample project and use gRPC's reflection to show the various APIs that my currently running SpiceDB instance exports. Make sure that, the demo fairies are in full force today. Let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to call this demo. All right, so we have a gRPC API. We're going to get them via reflection. And I know that my SpiceDB instance is running on localhost. And just because of this demo, I have disabled TLS. And as you can see, the client has imported or has used the reflection APIs built into gRPC servers and grabbed our APIs. So our APIs are split into various services. The most prominent ones you'll use are the schema service and the permission service. The schema service is for writing SpiceDB schemas, which I'll cover in the next section. You can think of them similar to relational database schemas, where they define the objects and how you can use them for a particular SpiceDB instance. So there's read-write APIs for those. And the permission service. So the bulk of these APIs are for both writing data related to permissions and querying them. We also have a watch service, which allows you to get updates on various changes within the database, and an experimental service where we launch APIs for testing and feedback, and eventually some of them graduate into our release services. And the other thing to note is that we try to make sure that the various APIs are available via the Zed CLI tool as well. They're more user-friendly because they follow a more semantic approach to defining the API calls instead of writing out gRPC calls. So one thing I can show is in Zed, I'll issue a schema write command. So you can see it hopefully reads intuitively, where we write for a schema, we write the file associated there and a few parameters that connect to my specific instance of SpiceDB. And the equivalent we can do in this gRPC command line tool. So we're just going to read the schema that we just wrote. We have a pre-shared key, and so I'm going to send that as part of this request to be able to communicate with my SpiceDB instance. So, this hello world. You can see we get a response. That is actually the schema that we just wrote. Okay, so this I know is a very, very quick overview of the APIs, but we can link to the official documentation where you can look at them in more detail. And next, we're going to actually go into how to actually integrate SpiceDB into an application and add a new permission. So one thing that I just showed was this first step, which is writing a schema to SpiceDB. So what did I actually write? Make that a little bit bigger. So this was a schema that I wrote just now. It is in a DSL that we have made for SpiceDB. A definition is a definition of an object or a resource. And then within the definition, you have relations and you have permissions. Relations, you can think of them as relationships between other objects and relations, objects or resources within your schema. And permissions are a set of expressions that have different set-like operations to define which subjects have that particular permission. And so this schema is relevant to the demo that I did, where we have admins and then we have users, which were the rows in that table. And a user can have a manager or many managers. And for the sake of illustration, I've added a viewer, someone who could view the user that is distinct from a manager. And we also have two permissions. So when I clicked the delete button and it either was not authorized or authorized, this was the permission that was checking. And so you can see that only managers have the permission to delete. And if we had another user and I gave that user, added them as a viewer on a particular user, they would actually be able to view them in the dashboard, but would not be able to delete them. Again, very quick overview, but there's more, a lot of information about the schema definition language in our documentation. Okay, the right call to schema, we use Z to do that. And so where we stand is that we have a SpiceDB instance running. This particular instance is running an in-memory database. Normally in production or in testing, you would use a backing data store. SpiceDB supports a variety of backing databases. The most prominent ones are CockroachDB, Spanner, or Postgres. There's MySQL support as well, and people pick and choose the backing data store based on their needs. The next thing is install the client. So in this demo, it's a Next.js project, and so we have official client databases, or sorry, we have official client API clients. So the way to install those are dependent on the platform, but in our case, since we're using Next.js, we installed the Node client. So what we would do is, let's see, in our case, we already had installed, but that's something you could do. And then the client setup. So we have, so this is the file that is that has the action that backs the delete button that we saw in the demo. So that would be this delete button here. It ends up calling this delete user call. So previous to adding SpiceDB integration, it was just running these two lines. So there's no checks on whether the incoming action is allowed for that particular user requesting this action. And so we added this integration. So the first step would be to create a SpiceDB client. We set up the client with these configurations. Things to note here, this is the pre-shared key with our SpiceDB instance. This is the endpoint that's running at. And again, for demo purposes, we've turned off TLS. And as for application integration, and like I said, this action initially was simply these two lines. If we want to actually perform a check on a permission, so in this case, we are checking to see if an application has if this action requested by a user has the delete permission. We set up the we set up a check permission call. And check permission call request takes the form, can this subject perform, or does it have this permission on this resource? And so we grab the resource, define the permission, and grab the subject. And the definitions up here are kind of listed out more for clarity above. And so we create the various objects representing those concepts, and we pass it through to a check permissions call. And as part of the check permissions call, a few things are returned, but the one of primary interest for us right now is whether they have permission or not. And so only if they have permission to, if the admin user requesting the delete has permission on this particular user row, we issue the delete command. One more application integration point was the ACL filtering. And so let me show you that piece. So the demo app originally simply issued database queries to populate that data. Our integration point looks like this. We actually have an API called lookup resources. So given a subject and a type, resource type, it'll find all the and a permission. It'll find all the resources that have that subject has permissions to that are granted. And so we add this new function called get allowed user IDs. We issue a lookup resources request. And so here it is, we're looking for, give me all, for this particular admin user who has view permissions on users, give me all those user IDs. And with this response, we get all the user IDs that this admin has access to. And we actually use that and feed this as input into the database query. This particular approach of ACL filtering is called pre-filtering. So we get a set of allowed user IDs and we pre-filter the database query with just those IDs, ensuring that we only show the user rows that are available to this admin user. Okay, that was a very quick run through of how to integrate a new permission as two new permissions to an application. From here, what you would hopefully want to do as next steps are, well, one piece that I have been manually doing via sed commands is actually writing the relationships that back these permissions checks. Those write calls would ideally be part of some dashboard interface where if there was, for example, a page where you would define the team members for a particular manager or a particular admin user, when you added users to that group, you would ideally issue write commands, and you would have to make sure to include those write commands as your dashboard application so that you're not manually setting permissions. And the other thing is that SpiceDB has been running in kind of this demo mode. And so before heading into production, you would want to run this in a productionized manner. And actually, that's the topic of next week's webinar: is how to run SpiceDB in a production context. We're going to go over some tooling that we provide to run SpiceDB in a Kubernetes cluster, and go over other factors to consider in running in different environments as well. Okay, so I think we covered a quick example demo of integrating a new permission into a dashboard application. I've shown you how to install SpiceDB, a quick way to get an overview of the APIs if you have a gRPC client or if you're using zCLI. And yeah, if you are trying out integrating yourself and you have further questions, we have a Discord community where people pop in and ask specific questions about Z-schema design as well as application integration. So thanks for your attention. Apologies for the demo gotchas. But if you have any questions about the demo or integration in general, please feel free to ask. Thanks.
It looks like just to update you, Sam. For those of you attending, Sam is full screen, so he can't see the chat. So I've been watching it on his behalf. But Jacob was just asking if we could share over at some point maybe the code that you had built with the demo app. Maybe we could send that out after the session.
For sure. I'd be happy to package this up and send this out. Like I said, this is a Next.js starter template that I just added the minimal changes to integrate SpiceDB. And you saw the bulk of the changes in the two files that I showed recently, most previously. But I'll package it up and we'll get a repo on GitHub and we'll send that link out.
Cool. And I think we've answered everyone's questions.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us. Like I said, we have another next week that ventures into running SpiceDB in production. So hopefully we'll see you again then. Thank you.
Awesome.